Welcome to Style Masterclass, the podcast that teaches women to look stylish and feel confident so that they can show up ready to conquer and slay, no matter what size they are. I'm your host, Miss J. You ready?
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Style Masterclass Podcast. I'm your host, Judith Gatan. I have a very special guest with me today. In fact, she was the first guest ever on the Style Masterclass Podcast. This month in Modern Charm School, we're talking about art and creativity. And my guest really embodies those things. And she's created this really cool path for herself where she gets to do the things she loves. So I'm not going to belabor it. I'm going to let her introduce herself, and then we will jump into today's podcast topic. Sarah, take it away.
Well, thank you so much for having me. It's so cool to come back full circle, because the first time we spoke was during the pandemic, I think, and I was building my business up and I wasn't singing opera because no opera was really happening for a long time during the pandemic. So it's really great to talk to you again now that I'm really doing both of the things that I love, and I found a way to create this life where I do both. So I am an opera singer. I am a lyric soprano, and my husband also an opera singer, and I live in Berlin, Germany. We moved to Berlin about a year and a half ago. It's sort of the seat of Germany, Austria, and Switzerland. Just have an astounding number of opera houses and symphonies and small ensembles. The work potential is just really phenomenal here. So we are here in Berlin making our performing dreams come true. So it's been super exciting. And I am also the owner of Songbird Sara Jewelry, where I specialize in vintage and antique fine jewelry. So these things kind of go together. The history, the glamour, the stories, just beautiful art is kind of what drives me in everything that I do.
It is so interesting. Last time we talked, we focused more on the jewelry side because so much was closed for opera singers, and opera was closed, and people trying to figure out how to do it online, but it just wasn't, it's not the same.
It's not the same. It's a live art form. It was a really, really scary time. And I mean, I was so grateful to have something else creative to pour my energy into, something to kind of distract me, and also another stream of income, because for a 2-performer household, we were thinking like, wow, everything we've worked for, everything that we've built in our careers, is it ever going to come back? How long will we be out of work? So the business during that time, the jewelry business, was a huge part of my life. I think I was working like 15-hour days. It wasn't sustainable, but it was important for me during that time. So now I've found a little more balance.
I love that. And I actually want to touch on that because I think sometimes when people think of artists in whatever form, they think like starving artists, or that somehow like you just find money.
Right. Yeah. I mean, the truth is that being an artist is an expensive lifestyle. Everything that we do to find jobs, to work on our art, to keep in shape, keep our voices in shape, costs money. So for a freelancer, as my husband and I both are, when we go to an audition, we have to pay for our travel. And if we stay overnight, that's also out of pocket. If I'm preparing a role and I want to coach it with a specific pianist, that comes out of pocket. We keep working with our voice teachers, our mentors throughout our careers to keep our ever-changing voices in shape, just like an athlete would. But that's also something that we're financing. So as freelance musicians, we essentially own our own company. We are our own company, essentially. And there are a lot of expenses that go into doing business. So yeah, it's difficult. And some years are better than other years. In Germany, Austria, and Switzerland, there's something called a fest contract, a fixed contract. This is something that we don't really have in the States. But if you have a fest contract, you're employed by the opera house for 1 year, 2 years. It could be a longer term thing, but you're an employee. You have your assignment of roles. You have your health insurance paid for by the company. You have vacation time. You're like a regular working employee. So that is something that I would absolutely love to have. That is something that would be wonderful.
Sending you all the good vibes, prayers,
the
things, friend.
Yes. Being a freelancer also has its perks. And if you're a freelancer, you are piecing together an entire year of different contracts. Those contracts could last anywhere from 1 week to 8 weeks. And you're essentially piecing together your year of work, your year of income. And if something happens, like an illness, even a cold, if you don't do those performances, you don't get paid for those performances. So a couple bad colds could really damage your income for the year. A pandemic could just really damage your income.
That thing that happened to the world. Yeah.
Yeah. So being an opera singer is sort of this precarious thing. And yeah, I think there is this romantic idea of suffering for your art and starving for your art, but no one wants to live that way. That's a really tough life. And it puts you at a financial disadvantage if you can't afford to go and hustle for your next jobs. So most opera singers have a side hustle. And it's something that isn't talked about in the industry as much as it should be. But especially in America, it is very, very common. In Germany, it's not as common, once again, because these full-time employment positions do exist.
Oh my gosh, this is so fascinating. So, there's so many. I'm like, my brain's like,
yeah.
Please tell us more about the side hustle aspect, because I think sometimes creatives think like, okay, I'm starve for my art, I'll make it work. And they burn the boats, all those kind of entrepreneurial euphemisms that are really not very helpful sometimes.
Yeah.
No one talks about the other side of this of like, yo, I work at this place on the weekends. Like,
yes.
There's a whole underground side hustle. So tell us more about that, because I do want us to talk more about those kinds of things to normalize it for all our peeps out there.
It's becoming much more above board. I think the pandemic really kind of changed things. I remember a lot of people would kind of like go public with the side hustle that they had for a long time. Like a lot of singers would post on Facebook and be like, I haven't told anyone about this, but like, actually, I'm a badass coder. And like, I'm building websites like for major companies. And like, I'm supporting myself during the pandemic with this. I didn't want to talk about it before because I thought maybe it would make me seem like less of a successful artist if people knew that I did something else. But I encourage other artists to start thinking about having something in addition, because you just never know. And even saying you just never know makes it sound like it's like this plan B that artists me, when I hear the plan B, what's your backup career? What's your backup plan? Like it makes me bristle, because that's always been said in a way like, if you're not successful, what are you going to do instead? But especially in America with the state of the arts, you could be extremely successful as an artist and still want and need extra income because life is expensive.
Right. And you pay for all the upkeep of your voice, travel, things that I think people don't consider when they think about artists or even models. Or I have a friend who just bought, she's brilliant. She's going to be a podcast episode will be airing with her, but she just bought space in the London Underground to just like have her art be on the advertisement. So she bought advertisement space. I think it was 50,000 pounds or something.
Wow.
Like she's an oil like painter and she had to pull out this money. This doesn't happen by osmosis, lovies. So I think you're right. It speaks to this idea that there has to be a plan B as opposed to a parallel
Yeah. As I say all of these things, like with such confidence, it makes it sound like I don't also suffer from that fear that like, oh my gosh, if people know that I'm also a jeweler, like, will they be able to hold both identities in their mind at the same time? Like I've gone through phases where it's been difficult for me, or finding the balance between my two careers has been difficult. So I don't think that I'm like a perfect poster child.
I don't think anybody is. If they were honest about it,
yeah.
They're just like, here's some things that went through my brain. And I think a huge part of what we do on the podcast is like just normalizing like what people think. I'm like, am I the only one? And most of my time coaching clients is like, you are not crazy. You are not alone. You are not the only one, over and over and over again. But I think you touched on something interesting is like, there have been moments, and then I'm assuming because they're moments or other moments where you think differently about the situation. So what kind of thoughts do you play with in your brain to kind of bring you through those moments when maybe self-doubt or worry kind of creeps in? Because it will.
Yeah. So when the opera world started to really come back, my jewelry business was like going gangbusters. Like it was just like, I was like, oh my gosh, I'm so successful. Like I've never felt so financially secure in my life. This is amazing. This is awesome. But at the same time, I really wasn't sleeping. I was just in overdrive all the time. I was never away from my phone. I was answering messages and having dreams about UPS. Like, you know, I mean, it was just
entrepreneurial nightmares kind of.
Yeah. Yes. I would dream about like photographing or sourcing. Like I was working during the day and then I was working in my dreams. And I felt like there wasn't really any more space. Like I didn't have any more creative space, because being an entrepreneur is super creative, but then there's also the day-to-day of running a business, which like just takes up a lot of brain power. And it was really difficult for me because I felt so simultaneously successful and not successful. Like I had something that like I was very proud of and that was doing really well. But then I was kind of like missing a big part of my soul because I just didn't have energy to practice. I wasn't like using my entrepreneurial brain to scheme about like finding auditions or networking with my people and getting back into the scene. And it was difficult to set those boundaries for myself because I was like, but the business is doing so well. If I step away from it, I felt really, really pulled. But essentially, I was just sad a lot because I wasn't performing and I wasn't taking the steps to get back into performing. So moving to Germany really shifted a lot. One, because of the time difference. I'm not awake for a lot of the time when most of my US clients are awake. Yeah. So it felt like I had like these morning hours where like they were just mine. Like I had nothing, no one was awake. That like really kind of helped me find the balance. I think definitely now I'm putting more work into opera than jewelry, but I think that, you know, they kind of hand off to one another. When my opera career doesn't quite need as much of my creative juices and my entrepreneurial hustle, then I can kind of reallocate those resources to the jewelry business.
And the image of the baton pass. Like, okay, friend, she doesn't need us right now. Here you go. And it's like, oh, thanks, friend. I'll take that and run with it for like until she needs you again, right? Like, I love that idea of a baton pass. I love that. So I think this happens to creatives sometimes. And I know that in the sewing community or like seamstresses, they talk about sojo, like getting your mojo back when you haven't sewn in a while. And you want to fuck something up, but you really know you should get in there. And like that kind of thought process, like how has it been for you to sort of get your singing mojo back? So you're sojo in a way too. Yeah.
It was really bizarre in the beginning because like, just like you said, it's like there are these muscles that you haven't used in a while. And that's beyond just the technique of singing. That wasn't quite as difficult. That came back a little easier than the muscles of being an entrepreneurial singer, of being like the CEO of my singing business. That was a little trickier because you would think it would be like really transferable from the jewelry business, but it felt so much more personal. It just took me a little while to kind of get back into that swing of like, I'm just putting myself out there all the time. Give me your opinion about who I am and what I do. That's something that you get used to and you get better at. But a couple of years off for the pandemic, like going to an audition for the first time after that time off, I was like, oh, wow, it's been a while. Like, this is rusty. Like, I just felt vulnerable.
Yeah. Like, and I think it was like that thick skin, right? Like you develop some calluses over your heart and your emotions. You can take the feedback or the rejection or someone not purchasing, which is a no in its own sort of way.
Right.
Right. Or some not purchasing. And I'm saying that in that regard, in the entrepreneurial sense, but like not opting to take you on for a season or for a show or something. And I can see what you mean, like that sense of like sort of thin skin, the calluses have kind of worn down over your heart and you're like, oh, that hurts. Oh, damn.
Yeah. And then to make it even newer, I took advantage of this kind of time off, this transition period, to really work on a lot of things. So without getting too technical, there are different categories within each voice type. They're called fachs. It's just a category. So within the soprano category, there are a bunch of subcategories. So when I was younger, I sang really high and really light soprano, coloratura soprano. And the roles that I sang were young women, maids, coquettes, and the singing was very high and light. And then as I got older, my voice started to shift. I am now a lyric soprano, which is more, it's actually a wonderful place to be, leading lady roles, more regal. Sometimes they're younger women. I mean, they're all younger women, but it's a little more like diva, fuller orchestras, fuller voice. My voice got darker, all good things. But I essentially had to relearn how to use a new voice and new roles as well. So I was ready to get out with my new stuff right when the pandemic happened. And then, of course, I didn't. So then I had extra time to kind of like chew on it. I met my teacher when I moved to Berlin. So there were all sorts of technical changes of like learning myself again in a new form. So getting back out for auditions, it was like I had done so much work under the surface. I had like reinvented myself like a little seed.
Yeah.
But like so much had changed and I was such a different person and a different singer and a better singer, but I hadn't shown that to anyone. So it was like this bizarre, like showing what I had worked on for so long in secret and like making that public. And then also just the fact that everything I had been doing was kind of like in this like little private container. So yeah, it was very exciting, but like it did take a while to get my mojo back.
Yeah, no, and rightfully so. Like you literally crafted a new identity for yourself, but you did it in like the secret lab. And I talk a lot about this in terms of confidence equation. Like there's one thing is like honing your like capability and your skills. And it's a whole other part of the equation. You're like, go take that out in the world and see what the response is. And both require a certain kind of confidence and courageousness. And we talk a lot about the skill development, but we don't usually talk about that second piece is like, and then I went and showed the world this new identity, this new skill. Please like,
yes,
please like me. I hope I made the right choice. Like over and over reassuring yourself. Yeah.
Yeah, it's really wild. So actually, I just had an audition on Thursday and it was for a fest contract. And the interesting thing about this was that they wanted a lyric soprano who could sing slightly lighter rep, like stuff that I had done before. this season. And then next season, move into heavier rep, which is the stuff that I'm presenting now. So because I want a job and I was like, yeah, I can do the old stuff. Sure, I can do the old stuff for a year and then I'll move into the stuff that I really want to do. So I went and did the audition, and then my agent called me with the feedback yesterday. And she said, they really love you and they would like to find something for you in the future, but your sound is just fuller and more adult woman than what they would want for these lighter roles. And that rejection was like such a great one for me because it affirmed that I had left that stuff that I was doing before. Yeah. And that like there was kind of no going back, and even, it was very affirming that like, no, I have made that change and people hear that. And it was kind of the best way to get a no. But
I think so. Like, if you're going to get a no, let it affirm this new thing you're trying or this new identity you've carved. Like, I love that. Thank you for sharing that story with us, because I think that's going to be very meaningful to a lot of people. Like the artist I had mentioned, she used to do dog paintings, and now she definitely does not do dog paintings anymore. So if somebody were director like, oh, it's nothing like your old stuff, she'd be like, yeah, I know.
That's the point.
That's the point. Exactly.
That's the point.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, that's so cool. And break a leg. I hope they find a space for you in the future with that fuller, richer sound that you're coming out with. Oh, it's so exciting. Like it's exciting to chat with you at this cusp. So let's say we had an artist who is listening, any type of artistic medium, like what advice would you have for them based on like this new shift that you've just gone through and are getting your mojo back?
Yeah. Well, actually, I have found coaching to be extremely helpful. I have a coach. She's awesome. Shout out to Katrina Galka. She's also an opera singer. And that for me was, I think, like really the switch that kind of made the difference. So like, I think there's something really cool about coaching that helped me like kind of reframe things at every step of the way. So that has been like really, really key in that. I think mental health is such a major struggle in being an artist because we're constantly like plumbing the depths of like sometimes our most painful experiences besides just like the actual experience of rejection and self-doubt. Like we're kind of like bearing our souls and our difficult experiences and then asking people to criticize that. And then, everyone says have a thick skin, but you can't have too thick of a skin because you still have to be sensitive to make art. So I think it's just really being able to find like that mental peace and that mental clarity and be able to reframe things for yourself, like at every step of the way.
Oh, I love that. I love it. And not all at once. Like,
no.
I was speaking to your friend this morning. I think sometimes we try to like reframe the big picture. And it's like, but I hurt right now. And that doesn't feel good right now. So great for the big picture. But how do I manage this right now? And I think you're right. Every step of the way is so, so important.
Yeah. And certain things feel different, like at certain times. Like, I think that like at certain points during my journey, if I had gotten feedback that said like the feedback that I got, like we just hear her just more womanly, more, I would be like, oh my gosh, I'm old. Like my time has passed. Like they're saying that I'm old. I'm not believable as an ingenue. And there are just different triggers at different times. So it's like, just like taking each little chunk and like working through it as those things come up, I think is really, really key.
Oh, I love that. That's like a perfect place to land. You have beautiful brooches on right now. Please go see this. If you're listening on the podcast version, go look it on YouTube because I want you to see the lovely jewelry she has. And I want you to go shop her store because there's some beautiful pieces there. So tell us where we can find you and where we can listen to you, because I'll put links in the show notes because we definitely want to be immersed in your world.
Yeah, that'd be wonderful. Okay, so my singer website is saraduchovnay.com, and spelling is tricky. So look at those show notes.
Link in the show notes,
Yes,
boo-boos. We got you.
Show notes. And then I'm very active on Instagram. Instagram is a great place for jewelry and opera. So my Instagram is a really nice mix of that. And that is Songbird Sara Duchovnay. Also, we'll put that in the show notes.
We got you.
And my jewelry website, which is linked to my Instagram, is songbirdsaraantiquejewelry.com.
And we'll leave links. Please go take a look, peruse, shop, share it with a friend. And we'll also get a link from her so you can go listen to her because it's pretty incredible. I totally stalked her on the YouTube. So thank you so much for coming today. We love chatting with you. She's also been a guest inside of Modern Charm School. She did an amazing Diamonds 101 class for us. They're still talking about it. When you talked about layering necklaces, everybody was like, well, Sarah said. I'm like, yep, Sarah said. We're going to do what Sarah said. So, if you ever come into her community, you'll also get the benefit of learning directly from her because she did an amazing class for us. So thank you so much, Sarah, for coming on today.
Thank you.
All right, everyone, we are out.
Thank you for listening to today's episode. To learn more about how to work with me, go to judithgaton.com. Click on the Start Here button to get access to my free personal style class. I give you a quick style win, a confidence boost, and you walk away with the tools to start getting stylish. Who doesn't love that? See you there. Miss J out.